Good morning and welcome to a special edition of the Commexis Cast Daily. Today we're going to talk about the Cambridge Analytica scandal and its connection to Facebook. We've had a lot of our clients kind of asking about what that might mean for them, so we want to get a little bit more in depth into that. Welcome back. I'm Phillip Brooks, Chief Strategist here at Commexis. I'm joined by James Van Horn, our Director of Paid Placement.
Hello.
And Len Ward, our CEO and President.
Hello.
So today we want to talk a little bit more about what the Facebook scandal and its connection to Cambridge Analytica might mean for our clients. Just so you guys know, we've had a lot of questions about it, and I'm going to give you a little background on it, but I want to make sure that there's right off the bat we understand that this is not something that you need to be as concerned about. It's something that's been out there for a long time. This data has been readily available on multiple different platforms. It's just a matter of how the company obtained it that really makes this something that could merit a slight amount of concern. So just to give you a background on what happened, Cambridge Analytica is an analytical data gathering company, and what they did was they purchased an academic license from Facebook to gather data using an app that they created called This Is Your Digital Life. What they were telling people that they were going to do with this data was to create psychological research. What this did was when you filled out an actual kind of a questionnaire, you also, in doing so, authorized them to pull data from your friends list, so people that were connected to you as well. And they took that information and sold that data to pollsters and people creating ads for political campaigns, which is in violation of the terms of service for a very specific reason. Again, this was an academic license that they purchased. So, keep that in mind when we talk about some of the ramifications and repercussions of what they did, because really Facebook in a lot of ways is kind of the innocent bystander in this because of the way Cambridge gathered the data. But I think we just need to make sure we establish that context that this data was gathered in such a way that it violated Facebook's terms of service. So first off, the kinds of data that was gathered, do you guys have any insights as to what kind of things were used or how they were used in these political campaigns? We know that it was used for stuff for Ted Cruz's campaign specifically, and we know that Trump also purchased a lot of this data as well through John Mercer, one of his larger funding clients.
Yeah, I think, at least from everything I read and from what I know from using Facebook, I think it was more to influence than anything else. Once they had the psychological profiles, they were able to go out there and find not only those individuals, but like-minded people through the ad platform and be able to target them with a message that they knew would be able to influence or sway their decision. And I think that's what all boils down to is, like you said, for years, all this data is being collected. And it always pops up. It says, have you read this? Do you allow this? Do you click this? And everybody just clicks yes. They want to play the game. They want to use the app. They want to take the survey. Don't really give it a second thought. But what that's actually doing is allowing the free reign for that app or that platform or that program to go in and scrub some data.
Sure.
Like you said, though, it was taken to an extreme in this circumstance where it kind of bullets out all the information that this app will allow access to by you clicking allow. They collected a lot more data than that, and then not only they said they were going to use it for research, but then turned around and sold it, which is a direct violation.
Right. And keep in mind that 270,000 users of the platform actually authorized this application. So just imagine the amount of reach when you factor that by multiplying it against all of the reach that they have available through their friends list. And that's another piece that's a little bit more insidious, if you will, is that it wasn't so much that you're getting access to the person that was taking taking the test information. You actually were given access to their friends list as well, which speaks to what Jim was saying about you're getting the ability to see what the likes that these other people have and be able to put them into neat little groups so you understand exactly how to reach out to them and knowing where people are going and what kinds of places they're going on the internet and things that they're already fans of. So, as a company that really spends a lot of our marketing dollars in Facebook, what do you think this means to our clients, Lynn? I've tried to be as transparent as possible with it. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but it's something that we need to definitely make sure we kind of calm everybody down about.
Facebook isn't going anywhere. it's still a viable marketing option. I mean, if you look at it from the stock price, I think last I saw was trading as 160. I don't know what it's at this morning, but so it is getting beaten up. It is getting clobbered. And I think what's happening is that, you know, he's going to have to go testify. He's going to have to open up and talk about Facebook. But, you know, it goes on the heels of what I said this morning. We become a country of convenience. We like to buy something from Amazon opposed to getting in our car and driving to a store. We like to grab our phone and get information immediately on what's going on in the world opposed to waiting for the 6 o'clock news. And with convenience comes a price. And this is the price we're now paying for the new age that we now live in. So when you go opt in with your information and give information, it's giving the people with the ad dollars the information to put the right types of ads in front of you. Now, I'm not saying that this is good between, you know, the Trump campaign, the Cruz campaign, Clinton, whoever was buying that, but you have to know that when you go and opt in on certain things and when you do things online, you're creating a footprint, whether it's Facebook, whether it be LinkedIn, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're creating a Facebook that people can harvest this data and sell it and use it as an advertising platform. So at the end of the day, is Facebook going away? No, it's not going away. Do I think it's still going to be a viable entity for advertising dollars? I don't think there's any question it's going to be. Yeah. Is it getting beaten up right now? It's going to get beat up. Google's gotten beaten up in the past. This is a little more severe. You know, it's kind of getting, I saw yesterday, Tim Cook came out and made a comment and really kind of went after Facebook on a couple things. Now, keep in mind, Tim, the minute the iPhones are hacked, I just want you to remember everything you said. So we're all susceptible to this, but at the end of the day, the one thing that digital marketing is it's more transparent than you think, and your data is everywhere out there. And as a person, you have to really pay attention to where you're putting your data and what you're accepting, you know, what cookies you're accepting, what disclaimers you're accepting online. But again, it comes down to the thing I said here out of the gate. As a people, as the world, we all have to understand there's a cost and we're not paying it.
Yeah, I think the other thing to point out too is that when you're taking a look at this situation compared to overall, anonymity is key. You know, throughout all this scrubbing and everything we're doing about setting a footprint, it's still anonymous. It's not like we can say Joe Smith in this state. We can tell somebody in this area has these interests and likes and show it to them or put it in front of them.
Yeah.
But, you know, kind of what this though is they took that a step, like you said, they were accessing friend lists of people that may have no interest in them whatsoever, but they were getting the direct names. And of course in Facebook, you input your email, your phone number, sometimes your address, and then your actual true name to get the profile up there. So they were doing what, you know, usually in advertising, what we do is try and get that person to some kind of lead generation conversion point, whether it be a website or a form or a video watch or something like that, where they willingly submit the information. They were just taking the information. And that's where the biggest breach is, I think, and that's where a lot of the trust fails. But the anonymity throughout most of the marketing world is still there, and that's why I think a lot of these social platforms, you know, like we discussed before, like Snapchat. I think Snapchat has the perfect opportunity to grab this and run because their base, and they are still completely anonymous, and they just acquired a data platform. So they're gathering a lot of first-party data or data that people know they are willingly providing, you know, through access to apps and clicking that allow and clicking the OK, where they can target and pinpoint users when they're still anonymous without using those games or the questionnaires or the research stuff to get the information in. I think this kind of opens the door for Facebook's competition to gain some of that market share that they have.
It does, but Snapchat needs to go back to the other design they had. Yes. This new design's god-awful. But
well, and the problem with Snapchat is just that we don't have the analytics available that Facebook and other platforms do. So it's, as a marketing tool, it's still somewhat limited in viability. But you know, it's interesting that you mentioned Tim Cook, because we know that, you know, a few months back that Apple started removing automatically after 24 hours all the tracking tags from Safari. Yeah. So there's a lot less information following you around. So at least they're putting their money where their mouth is to some extent. But you know, keep in mind too that all of these tools, all of these social media platforms, this is their monetization model. This is how they make their money. Yeah. And you know, if you're spending whatever the ridiculous amount of hours a day that people average on Facebook, just think of all the value you're getting back for that, and what your currency is your information. Your currency is your data. So that's how you're paying for this. You know, the server load alone for a minute of server time has to be an astronomical amount of money. I can't even imagine. So, that's, Len had mentioned before, that's the marketplace we're in today. Your value as a consumer is your data, and that's all you're really worth to a lot of these companies.
And keep in mind, when you have the CMO of Procter & Gamble coming out and pounding the table that he's demanding more transparency with digital agencies, this transparency is going to come from gaining more and more data on the users that are actually interacting with these ads. So, I think the ultimate question is, well, how in depth are we going to really know about the people online and what they're looking for and so forth? And, I know, Jim, you made a good point about there is an anonymous factor there, but when you start looking at being able to read IP addresses, how anonymous are you at that point?
Yeah.
So, because you can start searching IP addresses and find out who these people are. So, I think that as a person, take precautions in what you're doing online to the best of your ability. Watch how you're doing certain things. Just, kind of have some common sense. But understand that some of your data is going to be transmitted and it's going to be out there. But this podcast or this video is really not meant for the individual person. That's just kind of speaking one person to the next. But it's more from an advertising perspective. It is some topsy-turvy times, and I'm very interested to see how Facebook reacts to all this. And I agree with Jim. I think this is a great opportunity for Snap, for Twitter, LinkedIn to a point. I really think this is a great opportunity for them to kind of get to the forefront and grab more ad dollars. But I think Facebook's going to come out of this absolutely fine, but it's going to be a bumpy road for a couple months.
And Jim actually made a really great point about LinkedIn when we were talking about this before we even started. LinkedIn has even more in-depth information about you, and it's even more accurate because like you said, go ahead, expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, what we were talking about was, with Facebook, sometimes if it can't crawl all the information or it can't verify it, it's going off your profile information. So if I say I'm CEO of some kind of fake company, and I try
stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, exactly. Then I try, if I target CEOs or stay-at-home mom, then it will show me an ad that's not relevant. Where LinkedIn directly ties into and is verified with a business. So if you say you're a CMO of ABC company, they know 100% you're a CMO of ABC company because you're connected to it. So whereas with Facebook, there is still that level of, best educated guess in some circumstances. With LinkedIn, it's pretty precise.
Yeah, you can even infer advertising data. I'm sorry, income data based on your job and where you live. There's a lot of things that you can pull from that you can't just with Facebook. So another thing we talked about earlier before the show started was just the effect of the short-term effects on lead generation. We might get from as a fallout because of all of this. So, while we continue to endorse Facebook as a linchpin for all of our digital marketing campaigns, and we'll continue to do so, we do recognize that in the short term, some of this may cause some issues with that. And Jim brought up some great points about how lead gen might be affected in that time frame.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. Facebook came out with basically for ease of use and to do it very quickly. They have a form built into some advertising models where you could just fill out the form to submit information, whether it be a free estimate, free consultation, or you just want to have the company reach back out to you. So it could be as long or as short as possible, but I feel like what we're seeing directly from running these campaigns is that they're not getting as much traction as they were even just 2 weeks ago. And I think you could kind of correlate that directly with, people are seeing everything in the news about their information being sold off. And it's just two completely different things where it's a lead gen tool. We're asking for information from a user with all the disclaimers available that they can go to and they can read online. That needs to be included in that ad type in order for it to run. So the users know what the information is being used for, and it's primarily being used for that client or that business to reach back out to them. But I think what we've seen is just that ripple effect of, we're seeing that people took a quiz or a survey or played a game, and now all their information's gone and their friends' information is gone. But it's not to say that some of the tools that you would go to and you would use in Facebook are still viable. A lot of safeguards and precautions they have been in place for years, ever since the first round of data breach back in 2011. So
ask Yahoo.
Yes, so they have precautions in place, like this disclaimer in this ad type. This was just one of those occurrences where it was false, like, misrepresentation.
Sure.
By the companies saying they were going to use it for research and instead sold off the data.
I mean, they actually made a commercial product from this, from an academic license. That's a big no-no. And if I was Facebook, I would use that to insulate me as much as possible, and that should be a countersuit, really.
Yeah.
So another thing I just wanted to kind of wrap up with that too is that there is some misunderstanding, I think, on the part of a lot of people that are not necessarily social media experts. The difference between a social media ad and the information that's gathered there and an app. So an app has a separate opt-in feature where you have to accept your terms of service. You have a check mark. You'll have to hit accept, that kind of thing. And in that disclaimer is almost always where that information is going to tell you what data can be harvested using that app. You're not going to see that from clicking on an ad. So there's a big difference between those two things and the scope and the scale of both of those things. So I think you're seeing people that aren't sophisticated with the social media confusing those two and conflating how those two things work, and that's also causing people to be a little bit leery about clicking on ads on Facebook as well.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I think it's a short-term thing because it was definitely a great option. I mean, both for the user and the business, because it provided the user the ability to reach out to solve a pain point without going through the whole process of going to a website or reading reviews or reading white papers. They just filled out the information and said, hey, call me back. And I can understand people are, I believe, just a little skittish because they can't really differentiate. They said, well, this app asked me questions, I answered, now my data's gone. This ad's asking me questions, what should I think about it? But like you said, it's two really different worlds. One is you willingly, knowingly giving up information because you want to solve a problem you have. The other one is, pure entertainment or to find out what kind of potato you are.
Yeah, if you want to know which Power Ranger you should be,
yeah.
I mean, that's information that's really vital. And I just want to kind of sum up really quickly before, again, to understand the impact and the value of this information. Remember that this was used to fuel basically the data for Ted Cruz's campaign. Keep in mind how that campaign worked out. Yeah. It wasn't the automatic win that they're making it sound to be. And they didn't really jump on the Trump's campaign. They didn't start buying that data until about 5 months left in the campaign. Now we know how that turned out, but it was a close race long before that. I mean, people were calling it one way or the other, but I think that to keep in mind the value of the data or the perceived value of this data is that we don't really know how effective it was, and we certainly know that it didn't help Ted Cruz at all. He didn't do anything, and we have a very small sample size for how long it was effective for Trump's campaign. So keep in mind that too, that as much as people are decrying how horrible this was, we don't even know if it worked. So just before you formulate your opinions, make sure you add that context on top of it as well.
And the one final thing I want to add, though, I think in the grand scheme of everything and what you just said, I'll just capitalize on it. Think of the power that social media has right now. This is astounding. And when you're talking about ad dollars, if there's anyone out there who's like, well, I'm really not, our company's not meant for social media, you're completely mistaking yourself. Social media is getting to the point where it's all advertising from a digital standpoint. It's just beginning to fuse directly on these platforms. And I just think it's something that you really, really need to consider as you're kind of looking at a campaign. How can you not be on these places? I mean, now they're claiming that they're controlling the elections and whatever it may be, but it's just from an advertising standpoint, if you're on the sideline on social media, maybe not Facebook right now, but you need to have your ad dollars in here. It's time.
Yeah, data's a tool. It's not the be-all, end-all of things. If you don't use the data correctly, it's not going to be an automatic win for you, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. So I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this. Again, we've had lots of questions. We're here. If you any clients or anybody that has any questions about this, please reach out to us. We would love to talk to you more about it, to explain exactly, if you have more in-depth questions, we're here. Otherwise, we'll see you again tomorrow for another edition of the Commexis Cast Daily.